Welcome back to the Sean Trey Show. I have some really interesting guests with me today. Now, would you guys like to introduce yourselves and tell people who you are and what you do?
Thank you very much for having us. We are, I feel like I'm introducing like a band if I speak in the plural. I'm Elliot, this is Zander Weaver. We're filmmaking brothers from the UK, and I guess we're here to talk about filmmaking.
Nice. And are you in a band at all, possibly?
Sadly not. We have a few guitars in the background here, but nice. I wouldn't dare pick one up because it would be embarrassing.
Maybe we should form a band.
We couldn't we?
Maybe we should give it a go, you know?
What would your band name be?
Oh, man.
Something kind of...
We did, what was it? Split the Difference.
Oh, yes.
Split the Difference. That's pretty awesome right there.
Yeah. We were doing a job once, and when we're lighting, you're pushing and pulling things that way, pulling things that way, and all day Xander and I were shouting across the room to each other, yeah, just split the difference. And the guy we were working with was like, if you ever form a band, that should be your name, because you've just said it all day and it really works.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
No, this is, and again, we're going to get into film, but there's a little bit of a play that I'm playing an angle here, and I want to run with me, guys. Run with me. Now,
running with you.
If you were to be in a band, what type of music would you guys play?
Oh man, cool question.
That is a good question.
Yeah, I mean, are you guys going to be like Kings of Convenience, where you're running some like weird harmonies there, like, ooh?
I think that feels...
Are you going death metal? Are you going, like wild 80s hair?
I love that.
I feel like people find our relationship as brothers quite interesting, because we're very close. We're best of friends. We work together. We get on. And some people are like, siblings? I don't get on with my sibling whatsoever. I wish I had that relationship. So I think if we were going to have a band, we would have to amp up the kind of like brotherly thing.
You reckon? Okay.
And go for, like you said, harmonies.
Yeah.
Really go for it. Have matching clothes.
Mamas and the Poppers, I reckon.
Mamas and Papas, Simon Garfunkel type thing.
Yeah, Simon
Garfunkel. Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah. All right. Cool. I didn't know, if it was going to be like a journey down toward like we're this death metal duo, or
it could be.
I mean,
it'd be surprising.
We appreciate a bit of rock and roll.
We do.
It's leather pants, man. You can't go wrong
I've
there.
got them on right now.
I mean, you can't see, but it's all going on down here.
That's awesome. Well, that's cool. It was interesting. Like, as I've been interviewing people, one of the things that's really interesting that continues to come up with music and film is tone. And so that was, as I started diving into that, it was an interesting, like, kind of little... Simon and Garfunkel has an interesting tone. Now,
they do.
As filmmakers, what type of tone do the films that you guys make generally have?
Well, I say warmth. I think is currently where we are in our creative journey. We fell in love with movies when we were very young, and like a lot of people actually, you fall in love with films. You're a kid and you're watching these movies and you're being impressed upon. Really, we fell in love with Spielberg movies in particular. There was a real era in the 90s when we were growing up. The adventure, there was warmth in cinema, even on the blockbuster scale, and I think that's really kind of bled into who we are as individuals, but also creatively what we enjoy, producing on film. So at the moment, that's where we are. We want to branch out. We want to try different things, obviously, because that's part of the journey of being a creative. But whatever we're doing, we always want to instill some sense of like depth and warmth of character, and it might be a thrilling experience, but there could still be heart at the center of it.
I like that. That's powerful, man. And it's interesting too, because I watched a film recently that was from an actor, and one of the challenges was when I watched this, and the guy's a great guy and he's a gifted actor, but in this film nothing anchored the character. And there was no like, I was watching this and this character was dealing with some stuff, and it was interesting because I didn't necessarily identify with the character. And I think that's where that warmth comes in, What was it? There was a movie that I was referencing the other day to some people, and I'm a huge fan of The Life Aquatic.
Oh yeah, fantastic! Yeah. brilliant,
Love it.
Such a good movie.
Such a good movie. I met Jeff Goldblum once, and he is literally the coolest guy ever. Jeff Goldblum I was like at the Whole Foods in West Hollywood, and I had this big burrito, and I was checking out, and suddenly I heard this like silvery voice from behind me, and it was just like, "How does that taste?" And I was just like, I'm in Whole Foods, and I'm in a rush. I had to get to work, and I look up, and I was just like, "Oh my god,
it's Jeff Goldblum!
It's Jeff freaking Goldblum!" He just tosses his hair back. It's just everything was glorious about that moment. But one of the things about Life Aquatic. Side note, tangents are wonderful, especially when they involve Jeff Goldblum. One of the things that I noticed about that movie is it's a story about a kid finding his dad. Mm-hmm. And, if it wasn't for that movie wouldn't work. Steve Zissou is such a horribly flawed character. He's kind of an asshole. But, that's what makes it special. And then this relationship develops with Owen Wilson's character, Kingsley, which is such a great name. Now, what are some movies, what are some of the movies that got you guys, going in film? What were some of those 90s blockbusters that were the things that hooked you?
I mean, it's funny that you mentioned The Life Aquatic, because it's a great analogy, actually, for a movie that on the surface has a lot of comedy to it. It seems quite satirical, but actually it is completely rooted in warmth and depth and this father-son story. And I think that is at the core, like Zander said, of the films we love. So, we grew up watching, so for example, something like Jumanji, which we went to the cinema to see. Jumanji is on the surface this rip-roaring adventure, and it's got all this, got all these effects work, and it's a real spectacle movie. But underneath it all, particularly with an actor like Robin Williams, there is such warmth and there is such heart at the core of the film. Right. And I guess it's somewhat like the curse of every generation that falls in love with something and then times move on. It's something Zander and we watch modern cinema, and it's in many regards the production values are the highest they've ever been. But we often find that heart that you say you find in Jumanji is lacking, and it's not that it kind of. It's one of those things that I don't think people necessarily notice, but I think it's the reason why, almost 30 years on, we're still talking about Robin Williams' Jumanji, or we're still talking about Raiders of the Lost Ark, or E.T., I think even Jaws, or films like Jaws isn't on the surface a film that feels like it's about people, but it is. It is about people.
Armageddon's a father story. It's a father. And it's like, you go home, protect my daughter. Oh my God,
Absolutely.
If you didn't have those things, and I think even though they were these epic movies and these huge blockbusters, you have those little moments that anchor things. One of the best for that is Die Hard.
Oh
a dad trying to get home to his kid, to his wife, to try to kind of make things right. And we have I studied the Ivana Chubbuck technique of acting, and one of the things that she was a big proponent of, her first things are like, what's your character's overall objective? What are they trying to get? So you look at like John McClane, what is he trying to get? Well, he's trying to get his life back in order. He's trying to get his power back because his wife left. What is the scene objective? Each scene you have a different objective that kind of strengthens that. And then the obstacles. And what's so brilliant about Die Hard is that there are all of these obstacles. Okay, like a simple movie, he flies in, tells his wife, I still love you. It's great. We're happy. We get back together. But, then you got terrorists. They got terrorists that speak a different language. You're in a place you don't know. You're a cop that's out of his element. And the most brilliant thing in that movie, the one part that I love the most, no shoes.
No shoes.
No shoes, yeah.
No shoes. It's so simple, but you don't think about it.
Yeah. It's fantastic because at the beginning he's on the flight, isn't he? And the businessman next to him says, when you get back to the hotel, take your shoes off, put your feet, your toes in the carpet, and you won't have jet lag. And I watched it recently, and I was like, that's the hook. That's how they get away with him. Just why does John McClane not have any shoes on? That's how. So it's a fantastic film.
And it is, and it's shot so well, and they get this beautiful shot of him getting his feet into the carpet.
Yeah.
And I think, but one of the things that's really important there that you touched on, and that I poke at all the time, is story matters. It really matters.
Yeah,
You can't get around that.
No, you can't. And then I think I feel like there is a like Elliot said, the cinema on the blockbuster level these days, it's remarkable, it's bombastic, it's huge, there's more money being spent than there ever has been, and all that kind of thing, and it's very impressive and very I think exciting for the future of cinema, like what could be achieved, right, with these tools. But I think something that we could do with trying to pull back is that story, that character. It's the type of thing, we have friends who are maybe 10 years younger than us who will watch films that they were too young to see when they came out in the cinema, and they'll be really touched by the movie, or they'll be surprised that it's so good, or this, that, or the other. And it's this like missing element that I think is absent from some of the blockbusters we see these days. And
I grabbed a box, and I'm going to tell you why I did this. You guys are looking at me going, what the hell is he doing?
What's he got?
Do you mind if I open Pandora's box? Let's reference The Mandalorian for more stuff.
We did it. We went there. Star Wars is on the table.
We went there. No. If we want to talk about like someone that like Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, thank you. The Force and the gods and old man Yoda. I don't have baby Yoda in front of me. But like one of the things that I love that they went there, like, they went back. Like the Mandalorian, especially season one. Season one, like for people who have not studied Japanese cinema, they don't realize that each one of those episodes is essentially tied into some famous like samurai movie. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So like the second movie is Baby Cart on the River Hades, which is from the Ogami Ito line. And it's this guy, the samurai, whose wife dies and he becomes dishonored, and he wanders as this guy who he's an assassin for hire, and he takes his little child with him. And that's essentially the second movie is taken not straight from it, but there's a lot of great tie-ins. And then, the scene, there's one episode in season one where they're in a village, and it's Seven Samurai. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, they literally were like, let's go to the master, which is Akira Kurosawa and some of these. But again, it's stories, and like not hating on the new trilogy, but I think that one of the things that you'll hear people talk about is that they came in with three different directors, and there wasn't an overall story arc for three films, and so it's tricky. But what do you guys think? I mean, are you inspired by The Mandalorian?
We love The Mandalorian.
Yeah, we very much enjoyed it. It just, I think the challenge that Disney has faced with this new trilogy is that they're handling characters that are so beloved, and people own those characters, the Lukes, the Leias, the Hans, the Chewies, and that's very hard to get right. It's very hard to please everybody. But I think you look at something like The Mandalorian, you've got a brand new character, you've got brand new worlds to explore, and people are so much more open and willing to, accept new things and all that. So I think there's more.
They have time. I think one of the other, they have time, because I think one of the challenges, and I think that's where we're seeing this interesting shift to it used to be that movies were big budget cinematic, and TV was, you had your sitcoms, you'd come in and you have your laugh track and the people watching, but they weren't making, besides like the Lonesome Dove series or something, they weren't making these long epics versus now, like they're huge, and they have space to tell a story. Like maybe if they had have taken that space for the Star Wars trilogy, the new one, it would have been able to like flesh it, because like I'm in Vietnam, and the Rose Tico character, her sister, the older sister that dies in the beginning, is a famous actor here. I know her. She's actually a big producer director here as well. She worked with my wife. My wife was one of the lead vocalists on her movie Go Back Saigon. And great actor, great story setup with Rose and how her sister dies. And they started off great, and then they're just like, you're going to be on this ship, and here's your, position. And it's like, whoa. you just set up this beautiful story, but yet if they had have had time, it could have been explored. So
absolutely.
Go ahead. What do you guys think about this movement from movies toward these cinematic shows?
It's interesting because I think also, so The Mandalorian obviously has ginormous scope. It's a huge show, but compared to the sequel trilogy, of course, it's a very contained
it's a
film about, it's just a story about, one guy, a lone warrior, and him looking after this baby. And it's very, very contained. And actually, if you think about the original Star Wars trilogy particularly, they're very contained movies. They're very small. It's about Luke going off to some swamp planet and learning how to lift rocks, and that's it. You're happy. For a long... Sorry, go on.
No. The new ones had a lot of characters.
A lot of scope, Big, sweeping...
You were saying, though.
Oh, well, I think... And it's one of those things where, like, we're all in that position, right? You're given the keys to Star Wars and an unlimited resource. And what are you going to do? You want to open that Pandora's box and give everybody what they want. But we, for a very long period of time, we were like, when the TV renaissance was coming about, with Netflix and streaming, Zander and I have always been cinema lovers, and we were for a long time going like, this is great, but we love that nugget of a movie. We love that 2 hours or 90 minutes of a contained story, and it's a Friday night and your favorite movie's on. You can't do that with a 25-part show. You can't tune into your favorite episode. But then in recent years, we have obviously engaged with streaming, and we watch Stranger Things, and we watch Peaky Blinders, and we watch Glow.
Peaky Blinders
is fantastic. And it's really, and obviously Mandalorian as well, it's really opened our eyes to the strengths that long form storytelling can offer, that in a way, no matter how good a movie is, you are limited by that 2 hours. And I think what streaming allows that movies don't is it allows that depth of character where you can just hang out with someone, see their journey, and by the end of it, you're hopping out your chair because you love it so much.
It does, and the audience, I feel like the audience is watching a series. They have patience. They have a lot more patience. We'll be 3 episodes in, the equivalent potentially of being, an hour and a half into a movie. Actually,
3 hours into a movie,
potentially through a whole movie and into the sequel. But in terms of the series, we're on episode 3. And things are just starting to happen. Like the main plot is just starting to gain traction, and I'm excited by that format because, again, it's the character, it's the depth that excites me about movies, and to know that audiences have that patience, they're willing to sit and watch, multiple episodes and give something a shot before making their judgment. I like that. I'm excited by it.
Well, I was like, I think about like what would have happened if Peter Jackson had had a series instead. Right, for the original Lord of the Rings. Like, oh my goodness, like the director's cuts were already like 5 hours long. And so like if he had have had a series, like, oh man, it would have been huge, wouldn't it? There was one moment there where I nearly lost it when you were like, what would happen if you were given the keys to Star Wars? And I just thought for a second, like it popped into my head, what would happen? And I could just visualize my meeting with Disney, like them setting the script back on the table and look at me going, Mr. Trace, we agreed for you to step onto this movie. We didn't think that you would cast yourself as a new Jedi.
Naturally.
You'd be like, what's wrong with that? I mean, sorry.
There's this lead character, he's going to save the galaxy, he's going to save Luke Skywalker, and I'm going to play it.
What's wrong with that? I mean, come on.
Nothing wrong with that.
Crazy things have happened. Yeah,
absolutely.
So this is why, there was always that joke of like, why did God not give me superpowers or stuff? Because I would probably use them in the wrong way. Once again, why Disney has not given me the keys to that franchise, right?
I'd like to see that Star Wars though, Sean, I must admit.
I'd be there on opening
night.
I'd take my money.
Yeah. I'd be down for it. But how did you guys move in? So you started out with, you guys were, fell in love with cinema. It was, kind of the direction. When did you guys know that you really wanted to get into film? Did you start making stuff when you were younger? How did that all work out?
Yeah, we made movies when we were... The first film we made, I was 3 years old and Elliot was 5. So we were out
That's
on a
awesome.
family trip. We were on the way home, stopped off at a pub, and our dad turned to us and he said, when we get home, should we make a film, a little movie? And to us, we were like, what does that even mean? I don't understand. Like, I just watched these things. I didn't realise people made them. So we got home, we got out the home video camera, and we made a little film in our bedroom with our dad. And that was it. You know, after that, it was this magical thing. We'd showed it to our friends and they loved it.
That's
and
awesome.
You get this massive significance, realizing that, there are people behind these stories, and no matter how simple they are, for us when we were younger, you still got that like kick out of creating, bringing your friends together and making them the actors in the film, and then showing it in front of your class at school and all that stuff. So all through our childhood, we were making all sorts of movies, and
That's awesome.
That kind of progressed. When we got to high school, we'd be given assignments by our teachers to write essays on stuff, and we'd say, well, could we make a documentary instead? Could we make a 15-20 minute documentary about the Roman army or something instead of writing an essay? And they'd let us do that. And so it just kind of kept feeding through in everything that we did, and we never really let go of it.
That's really awesome. How did you get started then? Like, that was, kind of how the seeds were planted, but what were some of your first projects? Were you shooting? I mean, some people come through the music video route. Some people are, you doing just short films. What were some of your early, like, actual, not professional works, but, things that you were like, this is festival worthy, or, this is something that, you stepping up your level, because I've seen some of your guys' work. It's great, man. So
thank you.
Tell me more about how you kind of got over that hurdle.
Well, we both, by our mid-teens, if not before, like Zander said, we'd really set our heart on this is what we wanted to do with our lives. So I left school ahead of Zander, being almost 3 years older, but we kind of had already had this pact. So I didn't go to university. I didn't go on to like further education, or go to media school or film school, anything like that. Just decided to jump in to try and get industry experience.
That's awesome.
And started off as, lowly unpaid production runners and assistants, and just getting involved in local. It's a great training ground, and it's great to, find your feet and feel out the hierarchy on set and the culture that exists around the profession. And did that for a while, mainly in the corporate video arena. And then by the time Zander left, we started to transition away from, we did a little bit more freelancing, didn't we? We started to freelance as cameramen, but again in only local work. We're based in Birmingham, which is the second city of the UK, and there isn't really, despite it being the second city, there isn't really much of an industry here. So most of the industry is either in London, down south, or a little bit higher up in the north. And we kind of made a decision to stay out of it and actually just try and build our own thing rather than moving down to London and getting in the mix. We were like, well, let's set up our own little production company. Let's make some shorts. Let's make some music videos for local bands. And then we eventually transitioned into making our own TV documentaries, which we financed and produced ourselves, like speculatively, and just slowly built, really, but always with the mind or the eye on our passion being in feature film direction, and always kind of having that vision of like, that's where we want to go. How do we engineer a financial security so we can make our films, we can step away from freelancing, we can step away from working day to day, and also everything we're doing, whether it be documentary work or music videos or whatever, always trying to hone our skill in narrative filmmaking. And there were many occasions when things were going really, really well and they were heading off down a cool path, but we were like, well, that's fantastic, and maybe if we didn't have this vision for where we wanted to go, we'd pursue it, but let's get back to we want to make movies. And that's kind of been, so I left school at 18 and I'm 33, and that's kind of been the 15 years since there, and we've made our first film and we're now working on our second, and it's been a long journey, but a good stepping process.
It's awesome. And one of the tricks too is like, one of the challenges I've noticed too in the industry is that you have to hold on to that vision because it's extremely easy to get pigeonholed. You know, like, oh yeah, that guy, you know, my friend was like, I'm going to do some weddings just for a one-off. And then he became the wedding guy. And there's nothing wrong with that. He made good money. But, you know, he was always like, I really wish that I had have, you know, tried to pursue making, you know, a feature. And he and I often I'll have this conversation. I said, well, you could always still try. And he's like, but then I wouldn't be able to, you know, help clients out. I would have to turn down work. And it's a challenge, you know, once you start down a path. Tell me about your first movie. Tell me about this.
Yeah. So our first feature film, it's called Cosmos. Immediately after I left school, we wrote a script for a film called Encounter, and it was quite ambitious. I mean, we tried to keep it contained, but we let our imagination run a bit, and ultimately we ended up with a project that you know, when we came to raise the finance for, we needed something quite significant. We assembled a great team of people, industry professionals who were really interested in what we were doing, and went to investment, and they were like, your team's great, but you guys have never made a feature film before. You've made shorts and things like that, but you know, this is a bit of a big deal. We're giving you a lot of money. So effectively their advice was like, go and make something smaller, go off and make a movie and prove that you can do it. And that's where Cosmos came from. I had the
exact same thing happen to me. Yeah. I had this beautiful script, went to these people, and they're like, this is beautiful. I cried the whole time. I loved it. This is expensive.
Yeah, very much so. And it was a great lesson. I mean, frustrating, difficult. You pour years worth of work and effort and love into these things. But ultimately, we decided to kind of put it on ice, put Encounter on the shelf, and say we can always come back to it. And we set about writing a new film script that we felt that we could achieve with the resources that we had available. The goal was to kind of make it as a no-budget movie, so we wouldn't be relying on other people for finance or anything like that. We were just going to we're going to find like-minded people who are just passionate about this idea, want to work with us, and let's make this movie together. So we wrote Cosmos. It's the story of 3 amateur astronomers who have like an astronomy club, and they kit out their car with all sorts of stargazing equipment, computers and telescopes, and they drive out into the night and they stargaze and listen to the sounds of space. And on this one night that we joined them, they discover a signal from outer space. And it's this, you know, it's this kind of very small, very personal story about 3 friends, but set against the backdrop of this potentially earth-changing discovery. So, yeah, it took us 5 years to make the film. You know, that was the nature of doing it the way that we did it. We were doing it on and off with other work, but we got there eventually. And, you know, we're all so incredibly proud of the movie, how it turned out, how people are enjoying it, and the results that we got from it. So it's far exceeded our initial plans and our hopes for the film. You know, it was supposed to be this thing we could slide across a table to someone and go, there, we made a movie, you know, give us more money. But actually, it's turned into something we love, and we ended up spending longer on it than perhaps we even needed to, because it was just something we were so proud of, and we wanted to get it right. So that's our kind of journey with Cosmos.
Well, that was actually how I found you guys. Like I found you before I put together the whole podcast.
Okay.
I found you guys because I was watching a video, and then all of a sudden Cosmos popped up, and what it was is it was highlighting how you guys were using like your lighting sources. It was talking about how like you use what was around you. You know, like sometimes you were using like an iPad or something like that. Yeah. You use like not a lot of like, you know, like big, you know, kinos or anything. You were using stuff that was available, and it was like, and that was something that popped up, and I was like, that's awesome. Like, that's really cool, because
thank you.
I've come up from my filmmaking background you're welcome. But my filmmaking background was also in a similar place of like, you have to use what you've got.
Yeah, definitely.
We absolutely do. In those, we're big fans of Robert Rodriguez. We've been very inspired by El Mariachi, and you know, then what he went on to do, and obviously the Rebel Without a Crew book, and all these sorts of things. And his spirit, his thriftiness of filmmaking, by just going. I always remember him going like, if you're walking down the road and there's a turtle walking down the road, like film the turtle, put it in your movie.
Yeah, you're like, it's in the film, isn't it?
Yeah, and you know, if you've got a guitar case, you've got a mariachi that's going to get involved in some crime drama or something. And that spirit really played into Cosmos. We looked at what we had to hand. We had a car, we had a load of computer screens because of video editing and stuff like that. And we just thought, let's look at what we've got that we can put in front of the camera, that we can kind of in it again, thinking back to the original Star Wars, where they're just taking things that exist in the real world and turning them into lightsabers and props and things, and that old school filmmaking. But yeah, also from a gear point of view, instead of trying to make the inside of this car look like it's lit with desk lamps and computers, let's just light it with desk lamps and computers, and then so it's on the one hand it's a needs must, and then on the other hand it's actually a really elegant creative solution.
We've said in the past that go on, sorry.
No, please do. Sometimes there's a tiny bit of lag, so I have to just nod, but go ahead.
I was just going to say that we've spoken about the process of making the film before with a few people, and we often talk about the fact that limitations can actually be quite inspiring creatively. I think the natural instinct is to go, I don't want limitations on my creativity. The sky's the limit is the ultimate position to be in, but I think that can be pretty paralyzing. You can go, what if I can do anything, what am I going to do, right? And instead, if you just say, we're going to try and make a movie with very little money, very little resources, it's going to be about 3 friends inside a car, how do we make that happen? You can then just focus all your attention on making that the best version of that film that you can, rather than worrying about what could have been or how else you could have done something if you had unlimited resources. So it was definitely a challenge, 100%, but it was something I think that really pushed us and pushed our abilities and really kind of challenged us to grow as creatives. So I'm very grateful for that.
Well, there was some of the modern blockbusters are a good example of sometimes having more budget isn't always better.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Because I think I imagine it this way, if I had an unlimited amount of money and someone said, go make whatever movie you want, I might start doing some stupid things just because I could.
Why not? Yeah.
Let's have 7 helicopters,
Why not?
Why not?
Absolutely. I mean, it's again, Rodriguez, he says, you can wash away the problem with the money hose. And also, interestingly, we are in an era of cinema where lots of successful movies from the past, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, they're either getting reboots or they're getting sequels. And we're seeing movies that are supposed to dovetail in with the original from 1970.
But they don't turn out well.
No.
And they're nothing like the original. And they've copied all the wrong things. They've forgotten the heart and the soul. And they now also have this ability to do whatever they want. And that first movie wasn't about doing whatever you want. It was about being limited and having difficulty making that first indie movie happen, and it became a success. And
one of my favorite movies for that is, hands down, it's still more modern, but they nail the idea of you don't need fancy stuff, you don't need big stuff, is the movie Drive with Ryan Gosling.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
I love that movie.
Yeah.
And it's you think about so many of the shots in that. There's not a ton of these big outdoor shots. There's a lot of close sets. There's a lot of simple things. They have a phenomenally great car chase scene that probably was a larger part of the budget, but the rest of it is, the house and really good cinematography and lighting.
Yeah.
And a phenomenal story.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's a very personal film, isn't it? Really, and also, I remember seeing the footage from inside the car of him driving around on the streets. And
in the opening particularly.
Yeah, in the opening. And you just think, this is really exciting, right? So they've taken digital cameras and their sensitivity, and now we're being able to shoot available down real streets, and it really does feel like you're in a car with Ryan Gosling trying to evade the police and stuff. So
but I think in that opening as well, where the film opens, I don't think there's an exterior shot of a car either.
No,
I think it's all set from within inside the car.
It's cool.
So they clearly have the capability to do that, but they're choosing not to.
It's cool.
Yeah. That's just brilliant to me. And again, it focuses on it's still story, man. It's still story and the way you're putting it together. Now let's talk about moving toward your future. What are you guys working on next?
So what we're working on currently, we've got a few projects in the works actually. We've just recently completed a short film which dovetails onto Cosmos, like a little anthology film, little sequel to the film.
Nice.
Which we're hoping to get up onto the sci-fi platform Dust. We hope that's where it'll be released in the coming weeks/months. But other than that, we've got 2 feature films that we're working on in parallel with one another.
Nice.
One is slightly more ambitious than the other. The first one that we wrote last year through lockdown is another sci-fi, because we love science fiction, and it's called The Deep. It's set at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, and
that's ambitious.
It's ambitious, but using what we've just all talked about, it's set within predominantly set within. Yeah, it's set within a single person submarine. Like
that's awesome.
Oh, thank
you. That's awesome. No,
that's
awesome. And it's so smart too, because like you just, one of the things that I loved about Blair Witch is it's what you don't show that's terrifying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, yes.
So you're in a single person submarine and you like, maybe you hear boom. There was this story about how like in the most recent spacewalk, or not spacewalk, but most recent trip, this Chinese astronaut went to space and he started hearing a knocking on the outside of his spaceship. And he just he was like, holy shit, man.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, it's exactly.
So he started hearing this knocking on the outside of his spaceship, and he's strapped in, and like you can't get to look over there. So like, like that terror of the inability or something's knocking behind you in a small spacecraft, like holy shit, it's awesome.
That is cool.
Terrifying. Yeah.
Creepy.
So
Creepy.
that's it. That's
Well, absolutely. I mean, that was The Deep. Actually started off. We wanted to make a capsule movie, and we were thinking about space, but then we just had this idea where we were like, "What happens if we don't set it all the way up there, but set it all the way down in the ocean and all the pressure and the dark and the cold?" It's a very out of space environment, actually.
Yeah. And like the thing is, like space, you have stars and you have light, even in the depth of space. But the dark, there is something inherently terrifying about the dark, which is something that you can play with. And I mean, and like, in that deep sea, you, even with the brightest lights, they have a couple meters maximum.
Oh yeah. You're absolutely right. Yeah, that's a really interesting thought, actually. It's completely dark down there. No light whatsoever from the sun reaches.
And anything that shines light is dangerous.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah.
Because the animals use light to lure things to their death.
That's
so
true.
Any lights you see, you get that anglerfish or anything that they use light down there, it's to eat something.
Whoa,
that's really interesting, right?
Freaky,
because
actually.
like as a species, we've evolved to find light safe. But there's obviously species
if you live in the dark,
where light is
dangerous.
not safe at all.
Yeah,
the opposite thing. So to them, light would be really creepy. Imagine horror movies made by fish.
Yeah, right. They're like,
oh, we can see everything.
It's bright. Get the hell out of here.
Go to the dark. Run into the cave. Yeah.
Right.
Oh gosh. Yeah, we're like, as Zander said, we love warm movies, so anything that's slightly scary really plays on us. We're watching it from behind our fingers and jumping, but there's something fantastic about that.
But that's a great premise, and then and with that you can go scary, you can go hopeful, you can go, because you could make a movie about a submersible and it's like a Rudy thing. You're like, you can get back to the surface and the guy gets back and it's like something positive, or it can be like a terror thing, or you can find a species down there, like what was it, Abyss?
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much potential, and particularly with science fiction, you can walk that line as well. You can you can dabble in all sorts. You can have a bit of even in things like Close Encounters. Obviously, it's a hopeful science fiction, but there are scenes in that movie where you're like, what's going to happen here? So you can walk that line quite cool in sci-fi, which is harder to do in other genres, I think.
For sure. Now, you said you have a second one, and is that one equally ambitious, or is it something that's more ambitious?
Yeah, so we had an interesting, just to give a bit of context, after we made Cosmos, We got it distributed. We had a limited theatrical run in the States, which was amazing. We couldn't believe it. And it's on VOD platforms and all that stuff. And that kind of opened doors for us. We got manager out in LA, and things started to bubble and boil. And we were like, oh, this is really cool. This is like part of the plan. This was the goal. And then, COVID came along and kind of scuppered everything. Yeah, the good friend COVID. We had plans to fly out to the US and see what we could make of those opportunities. But COVID came. We didn't want to fly. We couldn't literally go to America. And it really gave us like a moment to stop and think about what it is that we want creatively and personally in our lives, and whether, we have friends over there who are very much in the studio system, and they have these amazing moments of success where they'll sell scripts or they'll be, chosen to direct something, but they stay in development for a long period of time, and it can be quite demoralizing for them. And, we really respect their kind of tenacity. And actually, we took this opportunity with this moment of lockdown to say, well, okay, if we were to go again and make an indie movie, but this time we will have support and we'll have money, we can define how we want to make it, who we want to make it with, the type of stories we want to tell, maybe grow a bit more influence, a bit more of a voice and an identity as directors, so that when we do make that step up, we've got a bit more weight behind us, we've got a bit more influence, like I said. So The Deep came out of that, but also we're about to start writing another idea for a kind of micro budget movie. So this one between £50,000 and £100,000, that we can be developing in parallel with The Deep. So The Deep is currently on the road to finance. We've got a producer attached. We're going to film markets. We're having meetings, but it's like a lengthy thing, right? And you're waiting for emails and meetings and stuff. And in that time, we would rather be writing another script. It can make you crazy too. It can make you nuts. It can make you totally crazy.
Oh, today I have a bunch of things that I'm working on with my wife for some music for people, and I do music with her as well. And then I have some film projects that I'm working on with people too. And I've sent the emails, I've sent the messages, and I'm just in the waiting. Today I was sitting there like, I'm just gonna edit another podcast right now, because literally. Yeah. I can't email this same person again and go, hey, did anything change since yesterday?
Yeah. That's it, isn't it? And if you're a creative, then you've got that itch that needs to be scratched.
You've got to do something.
You want to do something, right? So we would rather use the time between, in those lulls between communication and between plans for the Deep, to write another script and to see where we can take it. We're considering taking some of the profits from Cosmos, injecting them into this micro budget movie, getting the ball rolling on it, and just get going on it. There's no reason why, The Deep could take 6 to 12 to 18 months to fund. It's like a £1 million movie. And for this micro budget movie, we could be doing that all during the time that's in development. So
Can I share one thing too?
Yeah, please do.
One thing that I've learned from the years of doing media, you don't know what's going to hit too. Mm-hmm. You don't know. You might get the money for The Deep and be like, this is the one that puts us on the map. But actually, it's the micro budget.
Absolutely.
You never know, right?
Yeah.
You never know. You never know. And that's why people, I've met so many friends that are like, I'm banking on this one. It's going to get and then like, this thing is the thing that people are doing. This one over here is awesome. And not saying this won't be, but you don't know.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's kind of the same as for us, what happened with Cosmos. We didn't really want to step away from this encounter idea and make a smaller movie, but we did, and it's really got us far, and it's done so much for us personally. And you're totally right. Like, we might make this micro budget movie, turn it around quickly, and get it going, and actually ultimately get more value from that than a bigger film. And we're really trying to kind of define what success means to us as well at the moment. We're trying to go like, well, what's the most important part about doing this job? And to us, we've identified that it's the process. The process has to be enjoyable. We want to be working with the right people, with the right work ethic and the right ethos. And all of those things we can get right now. We can do that right now. We don't have to wait to get to Hollywood to be able to have an experience that's fulfilling. So, that to us, we're just trying to cultivate that right kind of atmosphere for ourselves and set the goalposts correctly.
I like that. I like that a lot. Now, if you guys could give some advice to your younger selves, what type of advice would you guys give yourselves?
I guess two-hander really. I would say be patient. You've got to practice like patience. And with that hand in hand, it's persistence. So you got to keep going. Don't give up. Don't give up. Don't give up. But also understand that things take longer than you think they will. But that's okay, because it's the journey, not the destination. And those two will feed each other. If you're patient, you can keep moving forward. You can keep growing, keep developing. And if you're persistent, have faith. It'll all work out in the end. And again, without kind of bringing up Cosmos again, like Zander said, it wasn't something we necessarily wanted to do at the time. We wanted to make Encounter. We didn't want to have to step away and make this smaller movie. But when we were making it, we found ourselves regularly on set with the guys that were in the film. And we just said, if we could just take a moment to say, if somebody came along right now and gave us the financing for that Encounter movie, we'd reject it, because this is where we right where we want to be. We love this and we wouldn't trade it for anything. So I think one of the other things we've learned, I might be stealing all your wisdom here, sorry. One of the other things we've learned is that
there is much of it, yes.
Things that initially appear to be failures or defeats often end up turning out to be right where you're supposed to be.
That is what I was going to say. You stole my thunder. Yeah, I was just going to say that I guess to try not to resist quite so much, because I think when you're young, things happen and you get a bit kind of screwed up about it, and you think, why is this happening? And it's not going to plan. And I think the older I get, the more I realise that things that I may have considered to be failures at one point have ultimately turned out to have made me better at what I do, or realise something important about my life or who I am. And so now I'm at a place where when something happens, we might be on a business call with a potential producer and they might lose their temper with us, or they might say, we don't want to work on this film or something. You step away and you just go, okay, whatever, like you step off that call and you go, it will make sense. Like, yes, that would have been a great opportunity, but it will make sense in the long run. We'll find that right person to work with. We'll find the right place to take this film. And 100%. So that's what I would say. Just don't resist quite so much. Let it be.
I grew up in California, and one of the things we Californians understand well is surfing. And not everyone surfs, but it's a really interesting sport, because one of the things that you can have all the best plans. You're like, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to catch that wave. And the ocean's like, fuck you are. It's like you get your ass handed to you, and then some days you're out there and you think it's going to be great, and and it's just not. And there's other days you go out and it looks like crap, but you have a brilliant day. And you never know. And it literally is, it's all about going with the flow, because you might have all the best plans in the world. I remember before I was, I'm kind of a little bit superstitious like this, but not a little bit, but before I left LA, I was applying to every company I could. I had sent out my CV to everyone. And I was like, I want to make, a run at, doing new media, because I was doing videos for UFC fighters and for some other athletes, and it was fun. And I was like, I can do this. I've got talent. I've got experience. No one gave me a call. And there was just this moment of I was just like, what am I doing wrong, world? And then all of a sudden, I had this opportunity to come back to Vietnam. And when I came back here, everything started falling into place, and I met my wife, and, we started working together, and she challenged me to think even bigger. She was like, she's this big star here. She's the winner of the first Vietnam Idol. She's like, wow. She dreams big, and she's like, Sean, you can aim for even higher than where you're at, and stop putting yourself in a box. And so my point being, Steve Jobs has this great speech that he did before he passed for graduation. He says, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking back. And I love that. I firmly believe that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think well, I know that speech, and it's something that really resonated with me when I watched it. And you know, you think about your journey there. Well, had you have got those jobs, had you been selected, then you wouldn't have met your wife. You wouldn't be.
I wouldn't have my daughter.
It's just it's so life is. Don't even begin to try to believe that you have control over it. Just let it be. You know, it will work out. Things will happen, and you'll be thankful for those failures. You'll say, "Thank God I didn't get that position."
But you also have to be willing to stand back up when you get knocked down, when you get thrown around, because you will. But you have to try. You have to keep trying. You have to keep trying to knock down that door. But you know, I think that's kind of the way. I mean, and like I was having a down day a bit ago, and I was just like, man, I'm so down. I don't even know where I'm going with my filmmaking right now. And then all of a sudden I saw Dune, and I was just like,
oh, we haven't seen it yet, and we're desperate. We're desperate to watch it. Desperate. We're going to go soon, but yeah. See, you have those moments, don't you, where you watch movies and you kind of rediscover and you remember why
everything.
You do it. Yeah, why you work so hard, why you push yourself, why you continue on this journey.
Do you remember what the medium's capable of?
Yeah.
What it's all about, what it's capable of. I think one thing I always say to myself is, because we all get knocked down, and particularly as creatives, that's tough. It's like when people always go, "Don't take it personally." You go like, You don't quite understand what it means to be a creative person. I've poured myself into this project, and even though you don't mean it, and I understand where you're coming from. If you say you don't like it, you're saying you don't like me, and that hurts.
Yeah.
But one thing I always say to myself is, isn't that like crippling at times? But one thing I always say to myself is, I want to tell stories about people that are strong, and despite the hardships, you know, we all aspire to make movies about people that make it there no matter what. Well, if we want to have the privilege to make those movies, we also ourselves have to display those qualities. We have to live by the example of the stories that we're telling, and that means we have to be fighters, and we have to never give up, and we have to keep going no matter what as well. And I think if we could display that in our own lives, then we almost earn the right to tell those stories ourselves. So yeah.
I'm a black belt in judo.
Whoa.
And when people ask how I got my black belt in judo, I say by getting my ass thrown on the ground thousands of times.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then and you're laying there staring at the ceiling, and it hurts. Every single one of those throws hurt. You know, you get up, and then like, well, how did you get your black belt? And I tell people one thing: by standing up.
Wow. That is
by standing up. You know, and I'm trying to teach my daughter that. Like every single time she has something that happens, I'll tell her the first thing we do is stand up. Mm-hmm. You're not happy right now. You're crying because something happened. Let's stand up and face it. All right?
Yeah.
Are you still okay? Because if you can stand up through adversity,
well,
doesn't matter.
That's it.
Well, I mean, that's a wonderful phrase and a wonderful way of putting it. And every one of those times you were thrown to the ground, you learned something. You realize what not to do next time. You realize a weakness you may have had here or there, or what to avoid in the future. And if you'd have just like somehow breezed it all the way to black belt the first time you encountered some kind of challenge, some kind of opponent that really pushed you wouldn't have the ability and the experience to cope with it. That's just life.
That is a great metaphor for life, isn't it? That black belt rise to black belt.
Love it.
But then I also though, when I got my black belt, got my butt handed to me by some other guy who had hardly trained, and I was just like, and it forced me to reevaluate again. And a lot of people would have been like, "Is my system not good enough?" I was like, "No, I'm going to go study with that guy." So I went and studied
role model.
Let's go.
I remember reading something, and it said like, aim to be the least kind of talented person in your group. Like wherever you are, aim to be at the bottom of the pile, because then the group lifts you. And if you find yourself at the top of the group, start looking for the next group. Where you step into it and you say, "Oh, I'm." Like in your example here, go and train with that person that's going to push you harder. Don't train with the people you can beat.
Exactly. That's awesome. So we all have to try to get on the Mandalorian.
We do, yeah. It's all part of the plan.
That's what I'm drawing from that whole story.
Yes.
We'll get there. And when he takes his, well, he's already taken his helmet off, haven't he? But next time he takes his helmet off, it'll be you.
Right? That'd be entertaining. I wouldn't mind that. Yeah, I was telling one of the other. The podcast I posted today, like with Rick Joaquin. He's a really cool guy. He's a DOP from South Africa. Now he's in the UK, and I told him if I got any job on the Mandalorian, I'd show up in costume. Like if I was a freaking focus puller, I'd be dressed like a Jedi.
That'd be so good.
Well, not only does that display your fandom, but also when they're looking for an extra or they're looking for something, hang on, this actor hasn't shown up today. You're just like, hello.
I'm gonna focus pull and here. Be in the scene at the same time. Yeah, right. I actually don't know how to focus. I would be a horrible focus puller. That's not my skill set. That's not something I can do.
There's a great video of behind the scenes on E.T. I think they shot through Halloween, I think.
Yeah.
Or something, or it was someone's birthday, and all the crew were dressed up, and Spielberg turns up. He's dressed like a granny, isn't he?
Yeah.
Spends the whole day dressed in like glasses and a wig, and he's just directing from behind the camera, and that's the kind of spirit you want, isn't it?
It's brilliant. Yes, it is. Well, guys, I really appreciate you coming on today, and definitely would like to chat some more with you sometime.
Yeah, likewise.
We would love that.
Thank you very much for having us. It's been a pleasure.